Okay. So the first question is, which of the following statements is true of eyewitness testimony? And the options were eyewitnesses are more often correct than confident. Eyewitnesses who pay attention to details are most likely to remember the culprit's face. Confident eyewitnesses are less accurate when making identifications soon after the event, or confident eyewitnesses are not necessarily accurate. And that one is true. Confident eyewitnesses are not necessarily accurate, especially in the trauma or how crazy the moment is. You can feel really confident, but it just doesn't mean that you're more accurate. Okay. So the question is, what is not true of jurors in the courtroom? The first response was jurors are best persuaded when attorneys present evidence as a story of what's happened. That is true. Many jurors don't understand the legalese of judicial instructions. That is true. I don't think even I would understand the legalese. Um, Another question that one other thing that is true is understanding how jurors misconstrue judicial instructions is the first step towards better decisions. That's true. This question was what is not true, and what was not true is that premature opinions formed by the jurors won't influence how they interpret information later. Yes, it will. If you if you hear something prematurely and then you're asked like disregard that or something like that, it will still influence you. Okay. So the question is, among entering collegians, the proportion considering it very important or essential that they become very well off financially has done what between 1970 and 2016? Either declined, risen slightly, remained stable, or risen dramatically. It has risen dramatically. People consider it going into college, they consider it a lot more important that they become very well off financially. Um, this is partially because in most households, we've had the necessity of dual incomes if possible. Things are more expensive now. It's partially just some changing values, but it's partially that things are more expensive. I care about my salary more as there's more inflation. It's not just about inflation though, but long story short, it has risen dramatically. Okay, so the question is, which of the following statements is true about eyewitness testimony? The correct answer is most convicted people later exonerated by DNA evidence were victims of mistaken eyewitnesses. Yes, they were victims of mistaken eyewitnesses. It's really hard to get exonerated. And usually, if it's because of DNA, I mean, what else could it be? It's a mistaken eyewitness. So that's really sad. I'm excited to be looking at these papers about your views on eyewitness testimony in the courtroom. It's always such a mixed bag of what I grade, but I don't know that I have my own opinion. Probably. But yes, most people who are later exonerated by DNA, the problem was a mistaken eyewitness and not a malicious eyewitness, probably. Like they're just mistaken. I'm sure they would feel horrible. Um, what is not true? Jurors do not find confident witnesses the least believable. That doesn't even make sense. Eyewitnesses who remember trivial details are more accurate than those who do not. No, just because you remember some details doesn't mean you remembered everything. The testimony of eyewitnesses is the most accurate form of evidence and prevails all other evidence. No, the eyewitnesses, a lot of times, they are really not that good. They have their place, I guess, probably, but they're not that good. Okay. I will say in this review session, I noticed right before we hopped on that a couple of the questions, they were so long that they got cut off by Nearpod, but hopefully seeing most of the question will help. The question is to minimize the effects of inadmissible testimony. Judges are advised to either wait until jurors hear it before ruling it inadmissible so jurors know specifically what to disregard. That is not correct. Related immediately seeking a verbal pledge that they'll ignore it. That's not correct. Meeting with them during their deliberations to ensure that they will ignore it. That is not correct. What's correct is videotape the testimony and cut out the inadmissible part. So in some ways, it's like they see it on Zoom or they obviously see it on a video and you cut out the inadmissible part so they never see it. I guess this would be like, say you're interviewing somebody for a job and then um the like I don't know, somebody involved in the decision making is like, well, by the way, she had a 2.0 in college, but that's not really like related to this job, so she can still do the job, so just ignore that. But it's going to be in your, you can't just be like, okay, like it's still going to be in your mind. The best thing to do is videotape it and cut it. You just want them to never see it. If you tell people something and then tell them to disregard it, they really can try, but they're still probably going to be regarding it like just a little bit. Even if they're really not trying to, it's going to already be in their mind. So just do anything so they don't even see it. Yes. So the question is, no, where's my mouse? Okay. The question is Donna has been short of money and worried about her job security. Yesterday, she was surprised to see that she was getting promoted and given a 10% raise. The adaptation level phenomenon, which is also called the hedonic treadmill, suggests that she will either soon be worried about finances again, have better self-esteem from now on, behave much less aggressively from now on. That doesn't even make sense. Be a lot more ambitious, achievement-oriented worker now that she sees her past behavior has gotten her promoted. So she will actually soon be worried about her finances again, especially with like a 10% raise. And it's not just because of inflation, really, at all. If there wasn't inflation, you just adjust. You just adjust to the more money and your life feels it really does feel the same if it's like, oh, now you earn, I don't know, 10% more. It feels like really nice for like 2 weeks. And then you really just adapt to it. You don't even really notice that maybe you're spending a little bit more and you feel the same happiness. You're just going to be worried again. It's just weird, you're not even gonna be happier. I think I've been happier at one time in my life. I got a very large raise, and I think I was happier, but I still worried about money to the point where I would have thought, like, I would be everything would change, like, not really. I, like that was a long time ago. Now my fence is broken in my yard. Do I still feel like I can afford to fix it? No. I don't know. I don't feel more ambitious. I just feel like the same pretty much. If you get a small raise, you're still going to be worried about your finances. You think it's going to make you feel better, but probably not really. And that's due to the adaptation level phenomenon, also known as a hedonic treadmill. Okay. So the question is when witnesses to crimes filter information during acquisition and recall, they are committing either false recovered memories. No, you're not going to have, if you have a false recovered memory, you're like 1 in 1,000, 1 in a million might be a bit extreme. You're probably not going to ever have a false recovered memory ever just ever. It's not attentional resource allocation. It's not change blindness, but it is a schema-driven error. So when you filter out information, when you're trying to remember stuff, it's a schema-driven error because you have a schema or a mental prototype of what you think happened that is, you know, you just kind of have like the schema of it. And when you filter information out that doesn't fit that schema, that's a schema driven error and it's accidental. Okay. So the question is research on minority influence suggests that jurors in the minority will be most persuasive when they either begin to trigger some defections from the majority, are inclined towards changing their position, are favorable to the opinions and decisions of the majority, or tend to be aggressive in their attitudes. So the answer is begin to trigger some defections from the majority. um, if they're inclined towards changing their position, they might not seem like their mind is made up. If they're too aggressive, people might disregard them. If they're favorable to the opinions and decisions of the majority, that also could tell the majority that maybe they are right. All you have to do, if you want to change the mind of a group, especially if it's like 12 people, the best thing you can do is if you can change the mind of one person, it can start to be a domino. And it's really cool. So basically, long story short, if you're in a jury and you disagree with everybody, if you can change the mind of one person, that is the most powerful thing that you can do. Yes. So the question is research indicates that six-member juries are less inclined to pass strong judgments, are able to recall testimony more accurately, are less likely to include a community's diversity, or are more likely to have hung verdict. And the answer is that they're less likely to include a community's diversity. So let's say 15% of Americans are Hispanic. Well, if you have 12 people, you're a lot more likely to have a Hispanic person than if you have six people. And that goes for any type of diverse identity, income diversity, lived experiences, all types of things. If you only have six people, you're at you just are not going to have as diverse of a group. And then it's not going to represent the population's opinion as well. A six-person jury is not the end of the world, but it won't have as diverse of people just due to sheer numbers. Okay. So the question is, when jurors or some judges hear a case of like-minded people, they tend to go to extremes when making a decision as a group. This is an example of group shift, outgroup bias, group polarization, or groupthink effect. This is a memorization question. It's called group polarization. So when you think of things on your own, you're going to be less extreme most of the time than if you're in a group, because a group starts, if it's like-minded people, they start feeding each other. I've noticed this sometimes if I talk about politics with certain people, I'll come out of the conversation and I'll be thinking something like too extreme, and then I go home and I talk to my partner or something, and then I'm like, that was too extreme. Like, I think we all talked each other into something that was just too extreme. That goes for the courtroom as well. So be careful if you're in a group of people. You may think of something that's too extreme, and that's group polarization. The best thing you can do is rethink it on your own or with one person who wasn't there after the fact. Okay. So the question is, which of the following is one way to reduce individual consumption? Increasing income tax, regulating birth rates, providing incentives for conservation behaviors, or creating a one world economy? And the answer is providing incentives for conservation behaviors. If you increase income tax, you might just be consuming things that are cheaper that still have like the same packaging and the same, I don't know, stuffing in the boxes. If you got it online and stuff, it might just be cheaper. Regulating birth rates, I guess I see the side, but I don't know. That's not the correct answer. Creating a one world economy, I don't know what that is. I might have made that up. But providing incentives for conservation behaviors, that can be helpful. Like if I if I'm getting paid to carpool, that could reduce my behavior. I went to graduate school at UK, and well, they really just ran out of parking lot space, but they would pay you $400 if you had a parking space in the past to have a voucher to go get a bike and bike to campus. And so they're like, we will pay you to do this more eco transportation. Though in reality, they just didn't have enough parking spaces, but the pay was enticing. That made a lot of people do it. So providing an incentive for conservation behaviors is what will be the most likely to reduce individual consumption. Okay, we have one more question. Okay. So the question is, which of the following is most likely to help enable sustainable living on a global scale? Increasing inflation and tax rates? No, that's kind of what we talked about before. You could buy cheaper things that are just as bad for the environment, maybe worse, like a styrofoam food container costs less than like a cardboard one. Reducing the use of technology, that doesn't really make things more sustainable. Like if you just like use your computer less or something, that's not really going to do that much. Encouraging extrinsic values, that's just kind of like be aware. And it may be controversial, but I mean, I think awareness, like awareness months, they are important, but they don't make that much change per chance, because you just become aware, and the step after awareness is action. And so just becoming aware with your extrinsic values, that doesn't take it to the next level of change. But controlling material consumption is going to help enable sustainable living. Um, because there's less like material waste in our environment. So I thought it was really interesting that the book I've based this class on has this chapter. The guy who wrote this book is like a friend of a friend, and he's really passionate in this area. So that's why I chose this chapter as one to teach. Um, but that's pretty much it. I think the test has more questions on memory, but it definitely does have questions in this content area. So now I'm going to go over, look at the review packet and go over some things that are on the test. So give me a quick second here. Okay. Let's see. Be aware of the studies of Elizabeth Loftus. She is one of my favorite psychologists, and she's done all those memory studies and the Lost in the Mall and the hot air balloon, which is wild. All that type of stuff, that's her. Just be aware of that. She found in one study, this might have been on the review packet, but she found that like a court case where like 20% were voting to convict a suspect, but like 3/4 voted if there was one eyewitness. Um, so that is something that could be on the test. Know your upward social comparisons and your downward social comparisons. In the last papers about romantic attraction, I did notice quite a lot of confusion about upward social comparison and downward social comparison. People seem to think that social comparison meant that you're like people outside of your inner world are comparing each other, that's not really what social comparison is. What you need to know is upward social comparison means you're looking up at people who are doing better than you and feeling bad about yourself. So let's say you get a B on a test and at first you felt good, but then you found out everybody got an A plus and you felt bad. That's upward social comparison. You're looking up at the people who did better than you. Downward social comparison is the opposite. You get the B, but you find out everybody failed, and so you feel like you are a star because you did better. You're looking down on them. So no upward and downward social comparison. Let's see. Hmm. I would imagine I put a question about plea bargain. Most cases are solved with plea bargain, and that is something I did not know until I went to college. Um, what else? Um, Something that I was thinking about this last night, and something that I don't know that we discussed in class was the idea that hmm, did I even have this on the review packet? I don't even know if this is on the test. Um, but just in case, this is a bonus if you're watching the review video, and I was thinking about this. In a couple of states, they let juries be non-unanimous and they just vote, which is a very interesting concept to me, and I don't know if that's for better or for worse. They don't do it most places. But what's unfortunate is if you just let a jury vote instead of be unanimous, they're more likely to be racist. So that's something that may be on the test that may have not been covered in class, or maybe I did cover it. But if you're wondering about it, if you saw it on the review packet or if it was buried in somewhere, yes, a non-unanimous jury is more likely to be racist. And that is all that I really have for this review session. So I'm going to go ahead and stop recording.